The selection. The Galactic Coalition had ruled the stars for millennia, their technology so advanced that most species had forgotten the concept of warfare. Instead, they settled disputes through the trials, a competition where each world sent their champions to compete in tests of strength, skill, and intellect. The winners earned resources, territory, and prestige for their planets. The losers returned home in shame, if they returned at all. Commander Alexis Hayes stared out the viewport of the alien vessel, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot. She had been selected, or more accurately, taken, to represent humanity in this year's trials. The 7-foot-tall, purple-skinned Zextherian diplomat beside her chittered something that her translator interpreted as amusement. "Your species is quite fortunate," Ambassador Krulver said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "We discovered your planet just in time. Another century, and the devourer swarm would have found you first." Alexis remained silent. 3 weeks ago, she had been a Special Forces commander stationed in Afghanistan. Now she was apparently humanity's last hope for survival in a galaxy that had suddenly become much, much larger. "You still don't understand the honor bestowed upon you," Krulver continued. "Your primitive world will now have representation in the Galactic Coalition. Whether that representation is as equals or as servants depends entirely on your performance." "You keep saying performance," Alexis finally spoke, "but you haven't told me what exactly I'm supposed to do." The ambassador's chittering laughter filled the chamber. "Fight. Solve. Survive. The trials test every aspect of sentient capability. Most new species fail spectacularly." His upper eyes narrowed. "But we've studied your kind. Humans are interesting. You lack the physical strength of the Morgthai, the telepathic abilities of the Silvari, the technological prowess of the Zextherians. Yet you persist. You adapt. You overcome. So we're underdogs," Alexis said flatly. "I'm unfamiliar with this term." "It means we're expected to lose." "Ah." All 4 of Krulver's eyes blinked simultaneously. "Then yes, Commander Hayes. You are very much underdogs." The ship jolted suddenly as it entered hyperspace. Through the viewport, stars stretched into streaks of light, and Alexis felt a weight settle in her stomach. Not fear. She had long ago learned to master fear, but resolve. She might not understand the full scope of what was happening, but she understood duty. She understood survival. Earth was counting on her, even if Earth didn't know it yet. Days later, the ship emerged from hyperspace into a bustling system. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of vessels swarmed around a massive space station that dwarfed anything Alexis had ever imagined. It resembled an enormous wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity, with spokes extending from a central hub that glowed with energy. "Nexus Station," Krulver announced proudly. "Home of the trials and seat of the Galactic Coalition. Over 10,000 species gather here to trade, negotiate, and compete." Alexis pressed her hand against the viewport, momentarily overwhelmed. The station had to be at least 100 kilometers in diameter. How long has this existed? The first version was constructed approximately 12,000 of your years ago. This iteration is relatively new, only a few centuries old. As their ship approached the docking bay, Alexis noticed other vessels similar to theirs arriving. Each, she assumed, carried champions from other worlds. "The opening ceremony begins tomorrow," Krulver said. "You will be assessed, categorized, and assigned your first trial. I suggest you rest while you can." Alexis nodded, her mind already racing. She needed information, allies if possible, and a better understanding of what she was facing. Special Forces training had taught her that knowledge was often the difference between life and death. "One last thing, Commander." Krulver's voice had lost its mocking edge. "The Coalition has monitored your species for some time. Your world wars, your constant conflicts, most find them barbaric. But a few of us recognize something valuable in humanity's chaotic history. And what's that? You fight even when victory seems impossible. Most species surrender when faced with superior force. Humans. He paused, searching for the right words. Humans become more dangerous. With that cryptic statement, he left her alone in her quarters. Alexis sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the polished metal wall. She was humanity's representative in a game she didn't understand, with rules no one would explain, and consequences that affected her entire species. She smiled grimly. Just another day at the office. First blood. The assessment chamber buzzed with alien technology and voices speaking 100 different languages. Alexis stood in a line with dozens of other beings, each more bizarre than the last. Some floated rather than walked, others seemed to phase in and out of visibility, and one appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures. A small, gray-skinned creature with elongated fingers approached her, holding what looked like a scanner. Designation and homeworld, it demanded in a high-pitched voice. Commander Alexis Hayes. Earth. The alien's large black eyes widened slightly. Earth? Not in database. New species. Apparently. The creature made a dismissive sound and waved the scanner over her body. Bictal. Carbon-based. Primitive neural structure. No psychic abilities detected. No biotechnological enhancements. It seemed almost disappointed. Category: physical combat. Alexis frowned. What does that mean? It means, human, a rumbling voice came from behind her, that you will die quickly. She turned to face a massive reptilian being, its scales gleaming metallic blue under the chamber's lights. Standing at least 9 feet tall, with powerful limbs and a jaw that could probably crush steel, it towered over her. I'm Scarvash of the Drakon Imperium, it announced proudly. 27-time champion of the Raised Worlds tournament. I have destroyed opponents from 100 worlds. Its vertical pupils narrowed, and now I will add Earth to that list. Alexis met its gaze steadily. You talk a lot for someone who hasn't done anything yet. The chamber fell silent. Even the assessment officials stopped their work to watch the exchange. Scarvash's jaw dropped open, revealing rows of serrated teeth as it let out what might have been laughter. I will request you as my first opponent, little human. It will be a mercy killing. Before Alexis could respond, a melodic tone echoed through the chamber, and holographic displays appeared before each competitor. Alexis Reed. Combat Trial 1. Arena Combat. OP Konient. Skarvashish of Didar Akon. Time. Immediate. Your wish has been granted, she said dryly. The reptilian champion's eyes gleamed. The coalition has a sense of humor after all. Guards, or what Alexis assumed were guards, given their uniform appearance and the weapons they carried, escorted them to a massive arena. The circular battlefield was surrounded by floating observation platforms filled with aliens of all descriptions. At the center was Krelvor, now dressed in ceremonial robes, addressing the crowd. Today we welcome a new species to the trials, his amplified voice announced. Humans of Earth, a primitive world on the outer spiral arm. Their champion faces the mighty Scarvash in combat. Cheers and jeers filled the arena. Alexis was led to one side of the battlefield, given nothing but a simple staff and lightweight body armor. These are inadequate, she told the handler. The small alien blinked at her. You were categorized as physical combat, Class 3. This is standard equipment for your classification. And what does Scarvash get? As if in answer, the massive reptilian entered the arena from the opposite side, now clad in partial power armor and wielding what appeared to be an energy axe. Scarvash is physical combat, Class 1. The handler explained, as if this clarified everything. Right, Alexis muttered. Underdog it is. A transparent barrier rose around the battlefield, and Krelvor's voice boomed. Combat begins in 3, 2, 1. Scarvash charged immediately, covering the distance between them with surprising speed. Alexis barely managed to roll aside as the energy axe crashed down, leaving a scorched mark on the arena floor. "Stand still and die with honor," the reptilian roared. Alexis circled, assessing. The creature was powerful but slow to recover after each swing. Its armor protected vital areas but left joints exposed. Most importantly, it was arrogant, expecting an easy victory. Special Forces had taught her that superior opponents had one critical weakness: they underestimated you. She feinted left, then darted right as Scarvash lunged. The staff, while primitive, was lightweight and perfect for what she needed. She jabbed it hard into the unprotected area behind a reptilian's knee, a gamble that the alien's anatomy was similar enough to what she knew. It was. Scarvash roared in pain and momentarily lost balance. Alexis didn't waste the opportunity. She vaulted onto its back, using the staff as leverage, and targeted the neural cluster at the base of its skull, a weakness Krelvor had unwittingly revealed during her briefing about various species. The blow connected with precision. Scarvash staggered, momentarily dazed. Alexis wrenched the energy axe from its grip and, with a fluid motion, brought the weapon's handle, not the blade, crashing into the reptilian's temple. The massive champion collapsed like a felled tree. Silence engulfed the arena. Then, slowly, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Alexis stood over her unconscious opponent, energy axe deactivated but ready in her hand, breathing steadily. Krelvor's voice, when it finally came, held a note of astonishment. Victory to Earth. By non-lethal means. As guards rushed to remove Scarvash from the arena, Alexis caught sight of Krelvor watching her with all four eyes intently focused. She couldn't read alien expressions well, but she recognized calculation when she saw it. She had just changed the game, and the galaxy was taking notice. The Alliance. Word of Alexis's victory spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. Aliens stopped to stare as she passed through the corridors back to her quarters, some with expressions she could interpret as awe, others with what might have been contempt or fear. "You've caused quite the stir, Commander Hayes," said a melodic voice behind her. Alexis turned to find a humanoid figure with iridescent skin that shifted colors with each movement. Its features were delicate, almost elfin, with large almond-shaped eyes that glowed with inner light. "I'm Lyra of the Luminary," the being continued. "May I walk with you?" Alexis nodded cautiously. "You speak English." "I speak all languages," Lyra replied with a smile. "It's a gift of my people. We're empaths and linguists by nature. And what does an empath want with me?" "An alliance." Lyra's skin shifted to a deep blue. "The trials aren't merely about combat, Commander. They're political. The strongest species form alliances to dominate the weaker ones. Without allies, even the most impressive warrior will eventually fall." They reached Alexis's quarters, and she gestured for Lyra to enter. Once inside, the alien's demeanor changed subtly, less formal, more urgent. "You defeated Scarvash without killing him," Lyra said. "Do you understand how unprecedented that is? Most new species either die in their first trial or survive by embracing brutality. You showed mercy." "It wasn't mercy," Alexis clarified. "It was strategy. Dead opponents don't spread fear. Living ones who've been defeated do." Lyra's skin flickered with golden patterns, amusement perhaps. "You're more perceptive than the Coalition gives you credit for. That's exactly why I'm here. My people, the Luminary, lead a coalition of 12 species who believe the trials have become too brutal, too dominated by warlike species. We advocate for change from within. And you want humans to join your club." "I want you to survive," Lyra countered. "Your next trial is against the Korak swarm mind. They're insectoids who fight as a collective consciousness. No single opponent has defeated them in 300 cycles." Alexis absorbed this information. "And you're telling me this because I can help you prepare. In return, if you succeed, you publicly align with the Luminary Coalition. Lyra's skin settled into a steady silver hue. The galaxy is watching, Commander. A primitive species who defeats both Scarvash and the Corax would shift the balance of power significantly. I'm just trying to keep my planet safe, Alexis said. That's precisely why you should consider my offer. The trial against the Corax begins tomorrow. Think about it. Lyra moved toward the door, but paused. One more thing. After your victory, 3 different Dominion blocks placed bounties on your elimination before the next trial. They want me dead. They want Earth eliminated from the equation. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. I've assigned one of our security specialists to protect you. His name is Tarek. He's waiting outside. When Lyra left, Alexis found a stocky, gray-skinned alien with ridge-like protrusions along his arms standing guard. He nodded respectfully. Commander Hayes, I am Tarek of the Stoneheart clan. I will ensure you reach your next trial alive. That night, they came for her. 3 assassins, 1 gaseous, 1 phase-shifting, and 1 that moved like liquid metal, breached her quarters. Tarek intercepted the first 2 with surprising efficiency, using technology that solidified the gaseous attacker and disrupted the phase-shifter's abilities. The third slipped past him, flowing toward Alexis like quicksilver. She was ready. The makeshift weapons she'd fashioned from her room's furnishings weren't elegant, but the electrical charge she'd rigged using components from the room's lighting system stopped the liquid assassin in its tracks, its form convulsing before hardening into a metallic statue. Tarek looked at her improvised trap with what might have been approval. You were prepared. Always am. Alexis examined the frozen assassin. Let me guess. This one's from the Drakon Imperium. Yes, the others from the Hegemony and the Machine Collective. Tarek secured the incapacitated attackers. You've made powerful enemies very quickly, Commander. And potential allies too, it seems. Alexis made her decision. Tell Lyra I accept her offer, but I want something in return beyond protection. What do you seek? Information. Everything you have on the Corax swarm mind. And whatever you know about Earth's position in galactic politics. Tarek nodded. I will inform Lyra. Rest now, Commander. Tomorrow's trial will test you in ways you cannot imagine. As Tarek removed the would-be assassins, Alexis sat on the edge of her bed, mind racing. The game was becoming clearer. The trials weren't just a competition. They were the foundation of the galaxy's power structure, with species rising or falling based on their performance. And humanity, represented by her alone, had just announced its presence with authority. The swarm. The Corax combat chamber was unlike anything Alexis had ever seen. Rather than an open arena, it was a vast, multi-level labyrinth with transparent walls that allowed spectators to view the action from all angles. The air was thick with a sweet, almost cloying scent that Lyra had warned was a mild sedative, giving the Corax swarm mind an advantage. Remember what I told you, Lyra said through the communication device she provided. The Corax aren't individuals. They're extensions of a single consciousness. Kill one, and you've merely removed a finger. You must reach the Queen. Alexis adjusted the breathing apparatus Lyra had given her. It filtered out the sedative, but couldn't completely neutralize it. And the Queen is at the center of the labyrinth. Correct. No one has reached her in centuries of trials. Most competitors are overwhelmed by the drones long before they get close. The barriers around Alexis retracted, signaling the start of the trial. She moved cautiously into the labyrinth, every sense alert. The transparent walls reflected light strangely, creating disorienting patterns. Another advantage for the Corax, whose compound eyes processed visual information differently. She heard them before she saw them, a soft, chittering sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then movement. Dozens of insectoid creatures poured into the corridor ahead, each the size of a large dog, with segmented bodies and multiple limbs, ending in wicked-looking claws. They're hurting you, Lyra warned. Don't let them guide your path. Alexis had expected this. The Corax used overwhelming numbers to force opponents into dead ends where they could be swarmed and destroyed. But she had studied the limited footage of previous trials and noticed something others had missed. The swarm, for all its coordination, followed predictable patterns, like a computer program running through optimal solutions. That meant it could be hacked. She sprinted directly toward the advancing drones. The unexpected aggression momentarily disrupted their formation, exactly as she'd hoped. As they recalculated, she veered sharply right, into a narrow passage they'd left unguarded. Interesting strategy, Lyra commented, but they'll adapt. Counting on it, Alexis replied tersely. She continued this pattern, feinting in one direction, then exploiting the momentary gaps in their coverage. Each time, the swarm adjusted slightly more quickly. She was mapping their response patterns, learning the algorithm that guided their collective behavior. 20 minutes in, she reached a large circular chamber. The number of drones had increased dramatically, and now they surrounded her on all sides, their chittering reaching a fever pitch. "They're communicating your position to the Queen," Lyra said urgently. "You're close, too close. They'll throw everything at you now." The drones attacked in perfect synchronization, waves from all directions, forcing Alexis into continuous motion. One caught her arm with its claws, slicing through her armor and drawing blood. Another latched onto her leg before she could smash it away with her weapon. But she kept moving, kept pushing toward the center of the labyrinth. The wounds slowed her, and the filtered sedative was still affecting her coordination. For the first time, she felt doubt creeping in. "Commander," Lyra's voice had changed, becoming softer, almost reverent. "The viewing chambers are full. Every species in the Coalition is watching. What you've accomplished already is unprecedented." "Save the eulogy," Alexis gasped, ducking under a drone and slamming another into a wall. "I'm not done yet." She reached an intersection where 4 corridors met. Down one, she could see a pulsing, bioluminescent glow. The Queen's chamber. The drones seemed to sense her realization. Their attacks intensified, becoming more desperate. 3 latched onto her back, claws digging deep. Alexis staggered, falling to one knee. The spectators watching through the transparent walls had fallen silent. Even Lyra's calm had gone quiet. Alexis thought of Earth, of mountains and oceans, of cities and deserts, of all the people who would never know how close they'd come to becoming another species' subjects. She thought of human history, millennia of struggle, of falling and rising again, of refusing to surrender. With a roar that surprised even her, she surged to her feet, tearing the drones from her body and throwing them aside. Blood flowed from a dozen wounds, but adrenaline dulled the pain. She charged down the corridor toward the Queen's chamber, smashing through the increasingly frantic defense. And then, suddenly, she was there, standing before the massive Corax Queen. Twice Alexis's height, with a bloated abdomen and an almost crown-like structure on its head, the creature regarded her with multifaceted eyes that reflected intelligence and perhaps surprise. Around them, the drones had gone still. "You reached me," a voice echoed in Alexis's mind. The Queen, speaking directly into her consciousness. Alexis raised her weapon. One strike to the creature's central nerve cluster would end the trial. But something made her hesitate. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just a competition. This was diplomacy at its most primal level. The trials weren't about eliminating opponents. They were about establishing respect. She lowered her weapon and bowed her head slightly. "I reached you. Trial complete." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Queen lowered her massive head in what could only be interpreted as a reciprocal gesture of respect. "Acknowledged," the voice in Alexis's mind said. "Human. Worthy." The labyrinth's lighting changed, and an announcement echoed through the structure. Trial concluded. Victory to Earth by completion and acknowledgement. As medical drones rushed in to treat her injuries, Alexis caught sight of the spectators beyond the transparent walls. Many were standing, Some appeared to be arguing heatedly, and others were simply staring in disbelief. Lyra's voice returned to the comm, filled with undisguised awe. "Commander, do you realize what you've just done? The Korax Queen acknowledged you. That hasn't happened ever. It hasn't ever happened." Alexis smiled grimly through the pain. "Tell me something, Lyra. Was this trial supposed to kill me?" A pause. "Yes. The Draken Imperium and the hegemony insisted your categorization be elevated after your victory over Scarvash. They wanted to eliminate Earth as a potential power. And now, Lyra's voice held a note of wonder. Now the galaxy has to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. The Council. Alexis stood before the Galactic Coalition's High Council, her wounds from the Korax trial still healing despite advanced medical treatment. The council chamber was a vast semicircular room with tiered seating that accommodated representatives from hundreds of species. At the center sat 12 high counselors, the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Commander Alexis Hayes of Earth," announced a synthesized voice. "You stand before this council having completed 2 trials of unprecedented difficulty for a new species. Your actions have disrupted certain expectations." Whispers rippled through the chamber. Alexis remained silent, waiting. A massive being composed of what appeared to be living crystal leaned forward. "I am High Counselor Zix of the Crystalline Collective. Tell us, human, how did you defeat the Korax swarm mind without killing the Queen?" "I recognized it wasn't necessary," Alexis replied simply. "Elaborate," demanded another counselor. This one apparently composed of pure energy contained within a specialized suit. "The trials aren't about destruction. They're about establishing hierarchy. I proved I could reach the Queen. That was sufficient to demonstrate Earth's capabilities." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The crystalline counselor's facets shifted, reflecting light in patterns that suggested deep thought. "Perceptive," it finally said. "Most new species require decades to understand this fundamental truth." Lyra, standing nearby as Earth's temporary diplomatic liaison, stepped forward. "Honorable Council, the Luminary Coalition formally requests that Earth be granted provisional member status based on Commander Hayes' performance." This announcement caused an uproar. Multiple representatives rose to their feet, shouting objections. A representative of the Draken Imperium slammed a clawed fist on the table. "Unacceptable. One victory and one trick does not qualify a primitive species for membership. They must complete all 7 trials as tradition demands." The energy being raised a hand for silence. "Ambassador Krelvor, you initially sponsored Earth's inclusion in the trials. What say you now?" Krelvor stepped into the central area, his 4 eyes fixed on Alexis. "When we discovered Earth, we saw a violent, fractured world constantly at war with itself. We assumed humans would fall quickly in the trials, becoming a minor servitor species at best." He paused. "I have reassessed this evaluation." "Meaning?" pressed the crystalline counselor. "Meaning that Commander Hayes has demonstrated qualities we did not anticipate. Adaptability, restraint, strategic thinking, beyond mere combat prowess. These are valuable traits." Alexis watched this exchange carefully. Politics, it seemed, were universal, alien or human. The game remained the same. "The trials will continue," declared the energy being. "Commander Hayes will face the intellectual challenge, the endurance test, the diplomatic engagement, the resource management simulation, and finally, the cosmic understanding trial. If Earth completes these, full membership will be considered." Alexis stepped forward. "With respect, I request a modification." The chamber went still. No new species had ever dared address the Council directly, let alone request changes to the sacred trials. "You dare," began the Draken representative, but the crystalline counselor silenced him with a gesture. "We will hear the humans' request. Earth was brought into the trials without our knowledge or consent," Alexis said, her voice steady. "We had no time to prepare, no understanding of galactic politics, no opportunity to learn the rules. Despite this, I've completed 2 trials that were deliberately escalated in difficulty. She paused, meeting the gaze of each counselor in turn. I propose that each remaining trial be conducted with Earth having equal access to information and resources as established members. Furthermore, upon completion of the trials, Earth should be granted full member status with voting rights, not provisional status. The chamber erupted again. The crystalline counselor's surfaces vibrated, producing a sound that cut through the chaos like a bell. "Bold," it said when silence returned. "Perhaps too bold. What leverage does Earth possess to make such demands?" Alexis smiled slightly. The Korax Queen acknowledged Earth as worthy. The Luminary Coalition has offered alliance, and I suspect there are others who would prefer humans as allies rather than subjects. As if on cue, a representative from a previously silent delegation rose. "The Mech Collective supports Earth's petition." Then another. "The Free Worlds Association stands with Earth." And another. "The Evolutionary Concord recognizes human potential." Lyra's skin had shifted to a bright gold. She hadn't expected this development. Neither had Krelver, whose 4 eyes were blinking rapidly in what Alexis now recognized as agitation. The energy-being counselor conferred quietly with the others before turning back to Alexis. "Your proposal is unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times. The Coalition faces threats from beyond the galactic rim, threats that may require new perspectives and strategies." It paused. "We will grant your request for equal access to information and resources. As for full membership upon completion, this will depend on your performance in the remaining trials." It was a compromise, but one that positioned Earth far better than before. Alexis nodded her acceptance. "The intellectual challenge begins tomorrow," the counselor continued. "Prepare yourself, Commander Hayes. The galaxy is watching." As the council session adjourned, Lyra approached Alexis, her skin cycling through colors at a rapid pace. "I have no words," she said. "You've accomplished in days what my people have worked toward for centuries." "I haven't accomplished anything yet," Alexis replied. 5 trials remain." "Yes, but you've changed the dynamic completely. Species that would never have allied are now declaring support for Earth." Lyra's skin settled on a deep purple. "You should know. There's talk of assassination again. The Drakan are furious." "Let them come," Alexis said quietly. "But first, I need everything you have on the intellectual challenge." Lyra's expression became grave. "That may be a problem. The challenge tests mental capabilities humans may not possess. Telepathy, dimensional thinking, quantum cognition." Alexis smiled. "Then we'll just have to find a human solution to an alien problem." As they left the chamber, she caught sight of Krelver watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He inclined his head slightly. Not quite respect, but something close to it. The game was changing, and Earth was no longer just a pawn. Mind games. The intellectual challenge arena resembled a sterile laboratory more than a battlefield. White walls, clinical lighting, and at its center, a raised platform with a single chair facing what appeared to be a semi-translucent screen. Alexis was escorted in by Tarek, with Lyra providing last-minute advice through her comm. "The challenge traditionally tests the highest cognitive functions of each species," Lyra explained. "For telepathic races, it examines their range and precision. For quantum-thinking species, it tests their ability to process multiple reality states simultaneously. For humans, we don't know," Alexis finished. "Precisely. No one has ever evaluated human mental capabilities in a galactic context. The test adapts to each participant, scanning brain patterns to determine what form the challenge should take." Alexis approached the chair. "Any advice?" After a pause, Lyra said simply, "Be human, Commander, whatever that means to you." As Alexis sat, restraints automatically secured her arms and legs. Before she could protest, a neural interface descended from above, attaching itself to her temples with a cold, metallic touch. A disembodied voice announced. Neural pattern scan initiated. Species, human. Processing. Novel pattern detected. Calibrating challenge parameters. The screen before her flickered to life, displaying rapidly changing symbols and equations that made no sense to her. Then, without warning, images flooded her mind, not displayed on the screen, but projected directly into her consciousness. She saw galaxies forming, civilizations rising and falling, mathematical concepts beyond her understanding, philosophical paradoxes that seemed to fold in on themselves. The information was overwhelming, coming too fast to process. Subject experiencing neural overflow, the disembodied voice reported. Adjusting parameters. The flood of information slowed, then changed character. Now, instead of abstract concepts, Alexis saw scenarios, complex diplomatic situations, battlefield tactics, ethical dilemmas with no clear answers. Secondary assessment mode engage, testing adaptability, problem solving, and moral reasoning. For what felt like hours, Alexis was presented with scenario after scenario, each requiring decisions that could affect millions of lives. A plague on a densely populated world with limited vaccine supplies, a territorial dispute between species with fundamentally different concepts of ownership, a first contact situation with a potentially hostile civilization. For each, she drew on her military training, her understanding of human history, and her own moral compass to propose solutions. Sometimes the system seemed satisfied. Other times it presented variations of the same problem with added complications. Throughout it all, she could sense spectators watching, though she couldn't see them. Occasionally, she heard murmurs of discussion or debate. Finally, the scenarios stopped. The neural interface retracted, and the restraints released. Alexis stood, legs unsteady after the mental marathon. Challenge completed, announced the voice. Results processing. Lyra rushed to her side, offering a nutrient solution to help her recover. You were in there for 6 hours, she said. Most species complete the challenge in under 2. Is that good or bad? Alexis asked, her voice hoarse. Unknown. The challenge has never evaluated a human before. Lyra's skin had settled into a deep blue. How do you feel? Like my brain ran a marathon, Alexis admitted. What happens now? The challenge will present its evaluation to the council. Then, she was interrupted by the disembodied voice. Evaluation complete. Species, human. Cognitive classification. Anomalous. The word hung in the air. Anomalous. Not superior, not inferior, something entirely different. The human mind demonstrates limited capabilities in traditional assessment areas, the voice continued. No telepathic ability. No quantum cognition. No dimensional perception beyond standard 4-dimensional space-time. Murmurs from the unseen audience suggested this confirmed their low expectations of human cognitive potential. However, the voice continued. The subject displays exceptional adaptive problem-solving, contextual ethical reasoning, and what can only be classified as creative cognition, the ability to generate novel solutions not predicted by established parameters. The murmurs changed tone. Of particular note is the subject's integration of emotional processing with logical analysis, a combination that produced solutions of high effectiveness and ethical balance. This integration appears to be a naturally evolved trait rather than an engineered capability. Alexis glanced at Lyra, whose skin had shifted to a brilliant teal. What does that mean? She whispered. It means, Lyra replied, that they don't know how to categorize you. Your mind works differently than any species they've encountered. The voice made its final pronouncement. Challenge outcome. Successful completion. Note: human cognitive processes recommended for further study. Potential applications in crisis resolution, diplomatic negotiations, and ethical artificial intelligence development. As they left the challenge arena, they found Krelver waiting outside. For once, his manner lacked its usual condescension. 3 trials completed, Commander Hayes.